Resilience is not about pretending that nothing hurts or that storms will pass without leaving scars. It is about learning how to dance in the rain while acknowledging that the water chills your bones. When life hits you, and it surely will, the temptation to collapse under the weight of disappointment is overwhelming. The unbreakable spirit is not one that avoids damage, it is one that transforms damage into design. Resilience begins in the moment you refuse to surrender to despair, even when your hands tremble and your heart feels like it cannot endure another loss. It is in those hidden, silent moments when nobody is watching that resilience is forged. Because it is a decision repeated 1,000 times in the quiet corners of your soul. They are wounds that never announce their healing. They simply stop bleeding when you decide to stop scratching at them. Resilience is choosing not to reopen what life has already tried to stitch together. It is the refusal to give trauma the final word in your story. Pain cannot be denied, and pretending it never happened is a lie that corrodes from the inside. But resilience does not deny pain. It converses with it, listens to its lessons, and then takes what is useful while discarding the venom. A resilient heart knows that scars are not symbols of weakness, but proof that battles were endured and that survival was chosen over surrender. Every scar tells a story, and those stories become strength when retold through the voice of courage. Most people believe that resilience is an extraordinary power reserved for the chosen few, but it is not a rare gift. It is a daily practice. It is waking up when you would rather stay in bed. It is forgiving when resentment seems easier. It is trying again when your failures echo louder than your faith. Resilience is born in repetition, not in revelation. No one suddenly wakes up indestructible. It is crafted in the small, stubborn decisions to continue. Each time you choose to rise, even shakily, you train your spirit to withstand more than it thought possible. The unbreakable are not untouched. They are simply unwilling to let the break define them. Life will test you with losses that seem unbearable. You may lose people, dreams, opportunities, even parts of yourself. And yet, resilience whispers that what is left can still be enough to create a future worth living. It challenges you to trust that new strength will emerge from the ashes of what you thought would destroy you. It reminds you that your value is not erased by rejection, nor your future erased by one failure. The resilient know that grief is real, but they also know that grief is not permanent. They allow themselves to cry, but they do not drown in their tears. They allow themselves to rest, but they do not build a home in despair. Resilience has a rhythm like the beating of a drum. It is persistence in motion. Some days it sounds loud, like a warrior marching to victory. Other days it is faint, like a whisper in the background, a reminder reminding you not to quit. Both sounds matter because resilience is not always grand or glorious. Sometimes it is simply breathing through another panic attack, standing up after another rejection, or choosing not to numb yourself when life feels unbearable. The smallest acts of endurance accumulate into a spirit that refuses to collapse. Over time, these choices carve a strength so deep that it becomes your second nature. There is a dangerous belief that being unbreakable means being untouched by suffering, but the opposite is true. To be unbreakable is to walk through fire, fully aware that you may be burned and still come out alive, scarred but stronger. A resilient spirit does not aim to avoid pain, but to outlast it. It does not seek a life without storms, but the capacity to sail through them without sinking. The storms may tear your sails and soak your deck, but resilience ensures your ship does not capsize. It allows you to keep steering even with trembling hands, because forward is the only direction worth taking. Resilience is also humility. It is knowing that you cannot control every circumstance, that life is not obligated to bow to your plans. It is surrendering the illusion of control while gripping tightly to the control you still possess your attitude, your focus, your choices. It is saying, I do not control the wind, but I will adjust my sails. I do not control the storm, but I will endure the night until dawn. The unbreakable spirit surrenders what cannot be changed and invests all its strength into what still can. The foundation of resilience is hope, but not the shallow kind that waits passively for things to improve. It is active hope, the kind that fuels effort, persistence, and endurance. It is the hope that tomorrow can be better, because you are willing to build it, not because you are entitled to it. This kind of hope digs deep into the soil of despair and plants seeds of possibility where others see only barrenness. It insists on finding light in the cracks of darkness. It refuses to give the final word to failure because it knows that every ending hides a new beginning waiting to be uncovered. Pain is a companion that nobody invites but everyone meets. It arrives unannounced, sits beside you in silence, and demands attention without asking permission. It stretches across your days and infiltrates your nights, turning ordinary moments into battlegrounds. To deny pain is to deny part of being alive. Yet, hidden within its sharp edges lies a paradox. Pain is not only a source of suffering, it is also a master teacher. Those who embrace its lessons discover that growth and wisdom rarely emerge from comfort. The cracks in your soul are not evidence of weakness. They are openings through which light and learning can enter. When you allow yourself to sit with pain instead of running from it, you begin to notice its language. Pain speaks in whispers at first, then in shouts if ignored. It forces you to confront truths you would rather bury and exposes attachments that keep you chained. Every heartbreak, every failure, every loss leaves behind a message written in invisible ink, waiting to be revealed by the fire of reflection. Pain strips away illusions and reveals what truly matters. It asks, who are you without what you lost? What remains when everything else is taken? In those questions, resilience and clarity are born. The temptation is always to numb pain, to drown it in distractions, substances, or shallow pleasures. But avoiding pain robs you of its wisdom. When you numb the ache, you also numb the possibility of transformation. Endurance is not simply gritting your teeth until the storm passes. Endurance is listening to what the storm has to teach. It is understanding that every disappointment carries a hidden curriculum, that every heartbreak is a classroom for learning compassion, humility, and strength. To embrace pain as a teacher is to treat each scar as a syllabus, each wound as a lesson plan. Pain reveals the limits of control. It shows you that life cannot be bent fully to your will, that there are forces larger than your plans. But in this revelation, it also teaches surrender. Surrender is not the same as defeat. It is acceptance of reality as it is, coupled with the choice to keep moving forward within those boundaries. Pain forces you to accept that some chapters cannot be rewritten and some people will not return. Instead of clinging to what cannot be restored, you are invited to write a new story, one that honors the loss while refusing to let it define the future. The wisdom of pain is not abstract. It becomes tangible when you notice how suffering carves out deeper empathy within you. Those who have walked through fire learn how to recognize the flames in others' eyes. They become more compassionate, more patient, more willing to sit with another's hurt without needing to fix it. Pain teaches the language of silence, the importance of presence, and the sacredness of simply being with someone in their struggle. A person who has been broken and rebuilt carries a gentleness that the untested cannot replicate. This is one of the richest gifts pain offers, the ability to connect more deeply with others. There is also a strength that pain alone can awaken. Muscles do not grow without resistance, and the spirit does not strengthen without trials. Each challenge, each heartbreak, each failure functions as a weight pressed against your soul, demanding that you lift it. At first, the burden seems impossible, but as you keep lifting, you go stronger. One day, you look back and realize that what once would have crushed you has now become manageable. The pain did not vanish, but it reshaped you into someone who can bear more than before. This is the alchemy of suffering, turning agony into endurance, turning wounds into weapons of wisdom. Pain also teaches patience. In a culture obsessed with instant relief, the endurance of suffering feels unbearable. But growth takes time, and healing cannot be rushed. Pain slows you down and forces you to live moment by moment, breath by breath. It teaches you to wait without losing hope, to trust that the seed buried in darkness will eventually sprout. Those who learn patience through pain discover a peace that cannot be shaken because they know that even the longest night will eventually give way to dawn. The greatest danger of pain is not the suffering itself, but the lies it whispers. Pain tells you that you are alone, that you are weak, that you will never recover. If you believe these lies, you risk building your identity around your wounds. But when you confront pain as a teacher, you begin to recognize those lies for what they are. You realize that pain is temporary, that healing is possible, that weakness is not permanent. You start to see yourself not as a victim of suffering, but as a student of it. And in this shift, you reclaim your power. Pain's final lesson is gratitude. Gratitude not for the suffering itself, but for the transformation it catalyzes. When you look back and see how your deepest wounds forge your greatest strengths, you begin to thank the very experiences you once cursed. You learn to be grateful for the nights you thought would never end because they taught you resilience. You learn to be grateful for the people who left because they revealed your independence. You learn to be grateful for the failures because they redirected you toward purpose. Pain, when embraced as a teacher, becomes a strange gift, one that reshapes not only how you see the world, but how you see yourself. Identity is the soil from which every choice, every dream, and every relationship grows. To live without a clear sense of who you are is to wander through life wearing masks that others, any you, never sure which one truly belongs to you. Authenticity is not a slogan or a trend. It is the relentless pursuit of uncovering the raw truth of your being, even when that truth is inconvenient or misunderstood. There is a constant temptation to trade pieces of yourself for acceptance, to mold your voice into something that pleases others, to silence your convictions so you can belong. Yet every compromise chips away at the essence that makes you unique. Eventually, the applause you sought feels hollow because it was earned by a version of you that is not real. To live authentically requires courage because authenticity often provokes discomfort. People will question you when you refuse to fit their molds. They will criticize you when your choices do not echo their expectations. The world prefers conformity. It rewards those who blend in and punishes those who stand apart. And yet, authenticity is the only path to genuine freedom. When you know who you are and stand firm in that knowledge, no external rejection can undo you. Approval loses its chains because you no longer depend on it to validate your worth. You begin to discover life anchored not in shifting opinions, but in unshakable identity. Identity is not discovered overnight. It is forged in the fires of trial and reflection. You learn who you are not by reading it in a book, but by colliding with challenges, by failing, by enduring rejection, by standing alone when it would have been easier to conform. Each trial peels away the false layers, revealing what remains when everything superficial is stripped away. Painful as it may be, the stripping is necessary because without it, you might confuse your essence with your performance, your soul with your reputation. Authenticity demands that you separate your true self from the roles you play, from the masks you wear, from the applause or criticism that surrounds you. There is a subtle slavery in living for the approval of others. It seems harmless at first, even rewarding. Each compliment feels like fuel. Each nod of agreement feels like affirmation. But gradually, your life begins to orbit around the expectations of those outside you. You say yes when you mean no. You silence your voice to avoid conflict. You pursue goals that are not truly yours. And in the process, you lose touch with the sound of your own heart. Identity fades when it is outsourced. Authenticity dies when it is traded for applause. The tragedy is that you may reach success and still feel empty because the success does not belong to the real you. To reclaim authenticity, you must be willing to stand alone if necessary. You must choose truth over popularity, integrity over convenience. This is not easy because rejection cuts deeply and loneliness can be crushing. But it is in the solitude of self-discovery that your roots go strong. When you no longer fear being misunderstood, you gain the freedom to speak and live with clarity. Authenticity attracts the right people, the ones who value you for who you are, not for the mask you wear. It also repels those who demand conformity. And while their absence may sting, it clears space for relationships that nurture instead of drain. Authenticity is not perfection. It does not mean you will never make mistakes or change your mind. In fact, authenticity embraces imperfection because honesty includes admitting when you are wrong, when you are uncertain, when you are still growing. Pretending to have it all figured out, another mask, another layer of performance. The authentic person is unafraid to say, I don't know yet, I am learning, I was wrong. In vulnerability, authenticity deepens. It builds trust because people sense when someone is genuine. A polished fire may impress, but it cannot connect. Only the raw truth creates bonds that endure. Living authentically also requires alignment between values and actions. It is not enough to declare who you are. Your choices must echo your words. If you claim to value kindness but treat others harshly, the dissonance corrodes your identity. If you say you believe in courage but remain silent in the face of injustice, the mask grows heavier. Authenticity demands integrity, the unifying of thought, word, and deed. This alignment may cost you opportunities, relationships, even comfort, but it grants you something greater, peace with yourself. And when you are at peace with who you are, no external storm can undo you. The search for identity is not selfish, it is sacred. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage to be real inspires others to remove their masks. Your refusal to shrink invites others to expand. Identity, when embraced, becomes contagious. It ripples outward, liberating those around you. A single authentic life can dismantle systems of conformity simply by existing unapologetically. Deep within every human being lies the longing to be seen and loved as they truly are, not as they pretend to be. Authenticity is the answer to that longing, but it begins with seeing and loving yourself first. Until you affirm your own worth, no external validation will ever be enough. Until you honor your own truth, no applause will satisfy. To live authentically is to finally exhale, to stop performing, to stand in the fullness of your being without apology. Identity and authenticity are not luxuries, they are the foundation of a life that matters. Fear is a master of disguise. It seldom arrives declaring its name. Instead, it slips into the mind dressed as caution, prudence, or logic. It whispers in subtle tones, convincing you that its chains are simply protection. And before you realize it, you are walking in circles inside an invisible cage. The bars are not made of steel but of thoughts. What if I fail? What will they say? What if I am not enough? These questions echo louder than dreams until the prison feels safer than the possibility of freedom. Fear convinces you that staying small is wisdom, that silence is peace, that inaction is prudence. But the truth is that fear robs you of the life you were created to live, because nothing suffocates potential faster than the belief that danger lurks behind every door. The tragedy of fear is not only the dreams it kills, but the identity it distorts. You begin to confuse who you are with the limitations fear imposes. You start to see yourself not as capable but as fragile, not as brave but as powerless. Fear turns mirrors into magnifying glasses for flaws and blindfolds for strengths. It blinds you to the talents, skills, and passions already living inside you. And once you accept this distorted reflection, you hand fear the keys to your destiny. You become both the prisoner and the jailer, reinforcing the very walls that hold you captive. Fear thrives in the imagination. It paints vivid pictures of worst-case scenarios, rehearsing failure in advance so often that it feels inevitable. Your mind becomes a movie screen projecting disasters that rarely happen, yet still paralyze you as if they were real. You avoid opportunities, relationships, and challenges because you are already living inside their imagined collapse. But the irony is that fear does not prevent suffering, it multiplies it. You suffer once from the actual event and 1,000 times from the imagined one. In this way, fear does not protect you from pain, it ensures you experience pain even when nothing has gone wrong. To confront fear, you must first name it. Fear feeds on vagueness, on shadows lurking at the edge of awareness. When you shine light on it, when you articulate exactly what you are afraid of, its power begins to weaken. Saying it aloud turns the monster into something concrete, something you can examine. You begin to see that much of what you fear is not as catastrophic as your mind insisted. You start to notice that you have survived before, that you have endured losses, failures, and betrayals and still stand. Naming fear does not erase it, but it reduces its size until it is no longer larger than your courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear be the decision maker. It is choosing action in the presence of trembling hands and racing hearts. The unbreakable spirit does not wait until fear disappears. It learns to move forward carrying fear along. Over time, action becomes the antidote to fear because every step outside the cage weakens its grip. What once seemed impossible becomes normal. What once seemed unbearable becomes manageable. Fear shrinks when you confront it with movement, when you replace imagination with experience. Fear also loses strength when confronted with truth. Many fears are rooted in lies that you are unworthy, that failure defines you, that rejection will destroy you. These lies crumble when exposed to the truth of your resilience and value. You have failed before and learned. You have been rejected before and endured. You have been afraid before and still acted. Each truth dismantles the illusion that fear is stronger than you. Fear thrives in silence and secrecy, but it suffocates when met with honesty and light. There is a cost to letting fear govern your life, and it is always greater than the cost of courage. The price of fear is wasted years, unspoken words, unlived dreams. It is the regret of looking back and realizing that safety was more important to you than freedom. The cage may feel secure, but it is still a cage. Courage, though risky, offers movement, discovery, and the possibility of becoming more than you currently are. The life you desire exists on the other side of fear, and only by stepping through its gates can you claim it. Fear also isolates, convincing you that nobody else struggles like you do. But the truth is that every person battles fear in some form. When you admit your fears, when you share them openly, you discover solidarity. You realize that courage is not a solitary act, but a collective one, fueled by the stories and examples of others who face their own cages. Community becomes a weapon against fear because shared vulnerability builds strength. Alone, the walls feel unbreakable. Together, they begin to crack. Every day presents a choice: remain in the comfort of the cage or risk the unknown of freedom. Fear will always argue for the cage, reminding you of dangers, whispering of risks. But courage argues for life, for authenticity, for purpose. The voice you choose to obey determines the story you live. Each time you choose courage, you widen the door of your cage until one day you no longer recognize its walls. Fear may still whisper, but its words no longer decide your path. The mind is the arena where every battle of life is first won or lost. Before success ever materializes in the physical world, it is fought for in thoughts, in beliefs, in the silent conversations that take place within. Every choice, every action, every destiny is born out of the soil of the mind. If the soil is poisoned with doubt, fear, resentment, or despair, then no matter how hard you work outwardly, the harvest will reflect the corruption within. But when the soil is nurtured with conviction, gratitude, courage, and clarity, it becomes fertile ground for extraordinary outcomes. The greatest wars are not fought with weapons in open fields. They are fought quietly in the invisible landscapes of thought where only you and your inner voices reside. Thoughts are not harmless visitors, they are architects. Each thought builds a structure in the mind, a house where your emotions and decisions will live. Negative thoughts construct prisons that shrink your possibilities, while positive, disciplined thoughts create bridges that expand your horizons. What you allow to take root in your inner world eventually shows itself in your outer world. A person who constantly repeats to themselves that they are unworthy will unconsciously choose relationships and opportunities that reinforce that belief. Another who affirms their value will step into spaces that demand and respect it. The battlefield of the mind is relentless because every thought either strengthens your spirit or sabotages it. The danger lies in underestimating the power of a single repeated idea. A single doubt rehearsed daily becomes a belief. A belief, once cemented, becomes a lens through which you see the entire world. When your lens is distorted, reality itself appears hostile or limited. The mind is a projector, and the world becomes a screen reflecting whatever film you allow to play. If the film is one of failure, fear, and despair, then every opportunity looks like a trap. If the film is one of possibility, resilience, and faith, then even obstacles look like stepping stones. You cannot control every circumstance, but you can control the narrative you play in your mind, and that narrative dictates how you will respond. To win the battles of the mind, discipline is required. Discipline means refusing to allow every thought equal power. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every idea is worthy of being entertained. The mind is a garden, and weeds will grow without permission. If you do not intentionally plant and cultivate what you want, destructive weeds will take over. Discipline is the act of recognizing the weeds, self-doubt, bitterness, envy, fear, and uprooting them before they choke your growth. It is also the act of consistently planting seeds of encouragement, faith, creativity, and purpose, even when you do not immediately see results. The gardener does not doubt the seed simply because the sprout is not visible yet. The gardener waters faithfully until life emerges. The battlefield of the mind is also a place where memory plays a dangerous role. The mind often replays past failures like an endless loop, using yesterday's wounds as evidence against today's possibilities. Memory can become a prison when it's allowed to dominate the present. But memory can also be an ally when reframed. Instead of rehearsing past mistakes as proof of inadequacy, you can view them as testimonies of survival. Every painful chapter can either be ammunition for fear or evidence of resilience. The choice lies in how you interpret the memory. You cannot erase the past, but you can decide the meaning it carries into your present. Another dimension of the battlefield is the influence of external voices. The words spoken into your life by parents, teachers, peers, or society often echo in your head long after they were said. If those words were harsh, critical, or dismissive, they can become internalized as truth. But they were opinions, not destiny. To win the war of the mind, you must learn to separate inherited lies from authentic truth. You must challenge the voice that says you are not capable, not worthy, not enough. The power to rewrite your inner script lies in confronting those echoes with intentional affirmation and evidence of your worth. Training the mind requires daily practice, just as the body requires exercise. Affirmations, meditation, prayer, reading, journaling, all are tools to strengthen mental resilience. But the most important element is consistency. The mind does not transform through one powerful moment of clarity, it transforms through repeated patterns of intentional thought. Just as rivers carve valleys through steady flow, so too do disciplined thoughts carve character and destiny. Every day you rehearse gratitude, you deepen its groove in your mind. Every time you choose courage over fear, you reinforce a pathway of strength. Slowly, the battlefield shifts in your favor, and what once seemed impossible becomes your new default. The truth is that everyone faces invasions of doubt and negativity. Victory is not about never having negative thoughts, it is about refusing to let them dictate your life. A warrior may hear the enemy shouting, but they do not surrender simply because of noise. They stay focused on the strategy, on the mission, on the higher vision. In the same way, the mind will always generate resistance, but you can learn to treat it as background noise rather than commands. The discipline lies in choosing which voices to obey, which thoughts to nurture, and which to silence. When the mind is conquered, life itself begins to change. Opportunities appear not because the world suddenly altered, but because your perception shifted. Challenges are met with resilience, failures with wisdom, losses with perspective. The external world bends to the inner one. The battlefield never fully disappears, but as you grow stronger, it ceases to intimidate. You learn to walk into each day aware of the war, but unafraid of it, because you carry the weapons of discipline, truth, and unwavering focus. Faith begins where logic runs out. It is the bridge that extends beyond what your eyes can see and your hands can touch. Hope is the companion that walks beside it, whispering in moments when everything feels impossible, that tomorrow might still hold something worth waiting for. Together they form the invisible foundation that sustains the human spirit through storms. Without them, despair takes over because reason alone cannot carry the weight of unanswered questions or the silence of long nights. Faith and hope are not luxuries for the weak, they are necessities for survival. They are the unseen anchors that hold you steady when the winds of life threaten to tear you apart. Faith is not blind naivety, nor is hope an empty wish. Faith is the choice to trust in something greater than your fear, whether you name it God, destiny, or simply the conviction that life has meaning. Hope is the discipline of expecting good, even when evidence screams otherwise. These two forces are acts of rebellion against despair. When everything visible urges surrender, faith and hope rise up as quiet but unyielding defiance. They refuse to let darkness read the final chapter. There are moments when faith feels impossible, when logic provides no answers and pain seems to mock every prayer. These are the moments that reveal the raw essence of faith, not certainty, but trust. Faith is not knowing how or when, but choosing to believe that somehow the storm will not consume you. Hope is not about ignoring reality, but about seeing beyond it, holding on to the possibility that current suffering is not the whole story. When the night feels endless, Hope insists that dawn exists even if you cannot yet see the first light. The greatest challenge is sustaining faith when circumstances refuse to change. Waiting erodes patience, unanswered prayers erode confidence, and repeated disappointments erode belief. But it is precisely in the waiting that faith deepens. Shallow faith demands instant results. Resilient faith persists without them. It endures unanswered questions, it wrestles with silence, it survives delay. This endurance does not mean pretending you do not feel doubt or anger, it means choosing to stand anyway. Authentic faith admits its struggles, but refuses to abandon hope. It holds on, even with trembling hands, because letting go would be to surrender to emptiness. Hope has a transformative power because it shifts focus from what is lost to what can still be. Without hope, the mind clings to grief and fear, replaying losses as though they were the end of the story. With hope, the same losses become soil in which new possibilities may grow. Hope does not deny the existence of tragedy, but refuses to let tragedy define the future. It opens the imagination to unexpected outcomes, to healing, to restoration, to joy that can rise from ashes. The very act of hoping is itself an act of creation, planting seeds in barren ground. Faith and hope also shape how you endure suffering. Pain without meaning crushes, but pain seen through the lens of faith becomes a teacher. It may not answer why, but it assures that there is a purpose even if you cannot yet perceive it. Hope whispers that what feels permanent is temporary, that sorrow has an expiration date, that what is unbearable today will not always remain so. Together, faith and hope give strength to endure without bitterness, to suffer without surrendering identity, to hurt without losing vision. There is a humility in faith because it admits that you are not in control of everything. It is the surrender of the illusion of mastery, the recognition that some mysteries are larger than your comprehension. Hope carries a similar humility, acknowledging that you cannot predict outcomes, but you can still choose expectation. Both invite you to release the need for certainty and embrace the courage of trust. This surrender does not weaken you, it frees you from the burden of carrying what was never yours to control. Faith and hope also create resilience in the face of rejection. People will fail you, promises will be broken, doors will close. Without faith, rejection becomes identity. Without hope, closed doors become permanent walls. But with faith, rejection is seen as redirection, and with hope, walls become detours rather than dead ends. They reframe failure not as proof of incapacity, but as part of a larger unfolding you cannot yet see. In this way, faith and hope transform even the hardest experiences into building blocks of strength. The presence of faith and hope in your life also influences those around you. A person who carries faith in their eyes and hope in their words becomes a lighthouse for others lost in storms. Their calmness under pressure, their refusal to give in to despair, their ability to speak possibility in hopeless situations, all of these become contagious. Faith and hope are not only personal lifelines, they are communal forces. They spread through encouragement, through example, through the simple act of standing tall when others collapse. Living with faith and hope does not mean you will never feel fear, doubt, or grief. It means you refuse to be defined by them. It means that even as tears stream down your face, you cling to the conviction that this is not the end. It means that even as you walk through valleys, you believe in peaks that still await you. Faith and hope are not about escaping reality, but about enduring it with strength, with vision, with the quiet assurance that beyond the visible lies something greater than despair. Love is the most radical force available to the human heart. It is not merely an emotion that rises and falls depending on circumstance. It is a decision, a commitment, a revolutionary act that transforms both the giver and the receiver. Love is not weakness, though the world often mistakes it for vulnerability. To love is to expose yourself, to risk rejection, to open your soul to joy and to pain. Yet it is precisely in that exposure that strength is revealed, because love is the only power capable of healing wounds that logic cannot touch. Where resentment hardens hearts and fear builds walls, love dismantles defenses and creates bridges that nothing else can build. The revolution of love begins within. It is impossible to truly love others if you despise yourself. Many spend their lives pouring affection outward while their inner voice is a relentless critic. This imbalance creates exhaustion because the source is poisoned. To love yourself is not arrogance, it is acknowledging your worth, embracing your imperfections, and extending compassion to your own humanity. Self-love does not mean excusing your flaws, but forgiving them while committing to growth. When you treat yourself with kindness instead of cruelty, you create an inner abundance that overflows naturally toward others. Love within becomes love without. Loving others radically is an act of courage because it often demands forgiveness. Forgiveness is not forgetting what was done or pretending the wound was small. It is choosing not to let bitterness consume you. Resentment feels like power, but in reality it chains you to the very pain you wish to escape. Forgiveness is liberation. It allows love to flow again where hatred had built dams. To forgive does not always mean to reconcile or to return, but it does mean to release the poison that corrodes your own soul. Radical love insists that no one deserves to hold the keys to your peace except you. Love is also discipline. It is easy to speak of love in poetry, in songs, in promises whispered under moonlight. But real love is tested in the mundane moments, patience when irritation rises, kindness when exhaustion weighs heavy, gentleness when anger tempts your tongue. Love is choosing compassion when revenge would feel sweeter, choosing presence when distraction offers escape, choosing service when selfishness beckons. These daily choices accumulate into a revolution of character because they shape you into someone who embodies love not as a fleeting feeling, but as a way of being. To live in love is to see others differently. Where the world sees labels, race, status, wealth, failure, love sees humanity. Love looks beyond the surface and recognizes the sacredness of every life. It refuses to dehumanize even enemies. This perspective is radical because it disrupts cycles of hate. When you choose to see the person instead of the offense, you create the possibility of transformation. Hatred multiplies hatred, but love interrupts it, breaking generational chains of bitterness. Even if others refuse to change, love ensures you do not mirror their darkness. Radical love also demands honesty. To love does not mean to enable or to allow harm. True love tells the truth, even when it hurts. It sets boundaries because boundaries protect dignity. Love says no when necessary, not to punish, but to preserve. Many confuse love with passivity, but authentic love is active, intentional, and courageous. It confronts injustice, speaks up for the voiceless, and refuses to remain silent in the face of cruelty. Love is not weakness that absorbs abuse, it is strength that stands firm against what destroys. There is a cost to living this way. Love will sometimes be rejected. You will pour out kindness only to be met with indifference or betrayal. The temptation in those moments is to close your heart, to harden it against future wounds. But closing your heart is also closing the door to joy. Love's power lies in its persistence despite rejection. To keep loving in a world that wounds is the truest revolution because it declares that bitterness has no dominion over your spirit. Every time you choose love again, you reclaim your freedom from the grip of cynicism. Love transforms not only individuals but communities. A society built on fear, division, and suspicion crumbles under its own weight. A society infused with love builds bridges, nurtures justice, and fosters belonging. Every act of kindness, every word of compassion, every gesture of empathy contributes to a collective revolution. Change on a large scale begins with small acts practiced consistently. Love spreads in ripples, beginning with one heart and extending outward until it shapes entire cultures. Even in the most personal sense, love is the source of resilience. When you love someone deeply, you find strength you did not know you had. You endure hardships for them, you sacrifice, you persevere. Love gives meaning to struggle because it ties your pain to a purpose greater than yourself. It transforms suffering into service, turning even the darkest seasons into soil for growth. Love provides a reason to keep moving when everything else tells you to quit. The revolution of love is not sentimental but transformational. It requires vulnerability, forgiveness, discipline, and courage. It reshapes how you see yourself and how you see the world. It is the most demanding path and yet the most rewarding because nothing else can heal as deeply, unite as powerfully, or endure as steadfastly. Love is the fire that refuses to be extinguished, the force that cannot be broken, the revolution that begins in one heart and expands to change the world. Limiting beliefs are invisible chains that bind potential long before failure ever arrives. They are the quiet sentences that echo in the mind, words like I can't, I'm not ready, I don't deserve it, people like me don't succeed. These statements often feel like truth because they are repeated so often, but in reality, they are illusions disguised as facts. They are inherited from voices of the past. Parents who doubted, teachers who criticized, society that boxed you in, or even your own moments of defeat that carved deep grooves in your memory. Over time, these grooves become pathways that your thoughts travel without question, creating a prison whose walls are made not of stone, but of belief. The danger of limiting beliefs is not only in what they tell you, but in what they keep you from ever attempting. They prevent you from trying, from risking, from stepping into arenas where growth and transformation await. You begin to shrink your vision until it matches the size of your doubts. Opportunities slip away not because they were unreachable, but because you convinced yourself not to reach for them. Every time you allow a limiting belief to speak louder than your courage, a piece of your potential dies silently, unnoticed by the world, but deeply felt by your soul. Breaking these beliefs begins with awareness. Most people live unconsciously under their weight, mistaking them for reality. The first step is to shine light on them, to catch the words you repeat to yourself, to notice the patterns of avoidance, procrastination, or fear. Ask yourself why you hesitate, why you say no before even trying, why you assume rejection before asking. Often you will find that the barrier is not external but internal, built from assumptions never tested. Awareness cracks the first stone in the wall. When you see the belief for what it is, a story, not a fact, you begin to reclaim power over it. Challenging limiting beliefs requires courage because the mind resists change. It prefers the safety of familiar lies to the risk of new truths. But every belief can be tested, and in testing, many collapse. If you tell yourself you are not capable of public speaking, the only way to dismantle that belief is to speak, to practice, to stumble, and to discover that you survive. If you insist you cannot lead, the only way to challenge it is to lead in small ways, to prove to yourself that your fear is louder than the reality. Each act of defiance against a limiting belief weakens its grip until it no longer dictates your decisions. It is important to understand that limiting beliefs often masquerade as protection. They whisper, stay small so you won't get hurt. Don't try so you won't fail. Don't speak so you won't be rejected. But in trying to protect you from pain, they also protect you from growth, from love, from discovery, from the fullness of life. The very shield they offer becomes the cage that suffocates. True safety is not found in shrinking, but in expanding, in becoming resilient enough to endure rejection, failure, or criticism without letting them define you. Another way to dismantle limiting beliefs is to replace them with empowering truths. The mind cannot simply delete a thought, it must replace it. Every time you catch yourself thinking, I can't, you can train yourself to say, I am learning. Instead of I am not enough, you can say, I am growing into enough. Instead of I don't deserve it, you can affirm I am worthy of pursuing it. These shifts may feel small, but repeated daily, they begin to carve new grooves in the mind, new pathways that lead not to paralysis, but to possibility. Over time, these empowering beliefs become the new default, and the old ones wither from lack of attention. Surroundings also play a powerful role in reinforcing or breaking beliefs. If you spend your life among those who constantly doubt, criticize, or limit themselves, their mindset becomes contagious. But if you surround yourself with those who dream, who risk, who expand, you begin to adopt their vision. The company you keep can either reinforce your cage or hand you tools to dismantle it. Choose carefully who speaks into your life because their voices will often echo louder than your own. Limiting beliefs also fall apart in the presence of evidence. Keep a record of every time you tried and succeeded, of every challenge you endured, of every fear you overcame. Review them often because memory tends to highlight failures and minimize victories. Evidence reminds you that you are stronger, braver, and more capable than your beliefs suggest. Each reminder is a weapon against the lies that tell you otherwise. Over time, your history of resilience becomes undeniable proof that you are not confined to the limits your mind once believed. The most dangerous limiting belief is the one that convinces you that change is impossible. This belief whispers that the cage is permanent, that the walls are unmovable, that you are doomed to remain as you are. But history and humanity are filled with people who shattered expectations, who rose from obscurity, who defied every prediction. They did not do so because their lives were free of limiting beliefs, but because they refused to let those beliefs be the final word. Change is always possible for those willing to confront the lies and replace them with truth. When you begin to break free from limiting beliefs, life expands. Choices you once avoided become possibilities. Roads you once ignored become invitations. You start to see yourself not through the narrow lens of fear, but through the wide lens of potential. And though the old beliefs may still whisper, their voices lose power because you now know the truth. They are not reality, only stories. And stories can be rewritten. Gratitude is not a reaction to perfection, but a discipline practiced in the midst of imperfection. It is easy to feel thankful when everything aligns, when success comes, when love surrounds you, when doors open easily. But gratitude shows its real power when life feels heavy, when losses accumulate, when the night lingers longer than expected. Gratitude in difficulty is not denial of pain, it is the deliberate choice to find light even in shadows. It shifts the focus from what is absent to what is present, from what is broken to what is still intact, from what has been lost to what has been gained in the process of survival. At its core, gratitude is perspective. Two people can experience the same event, one consumed by bitterness and the other strengthened by appreciation. The difference is not in the circumstance, but in the lens through which they choose to interpret it. Gratitude rewires the mind to search for meaning instead of misery, for lessons instead of laments. It does not erase hardship, but it transforms how hardship is carried. A burden carried with gratitude feels lighter, not because it weighs less, but because the heart has chosen to see purpose in it. The practice of gratitude often begins with small things, the details so easily overlooked. A breath drawn freely, a sunrise that paints the sky, a friend who answers a call, a meal on the table, a moment of laughter amid sorrow. These are not insignificant, they are anchors. When you learn to notice them, you realize that even in chaos there is beauty. Gratitude takes the ordinary and reveals its sacredness. What once seemed routine becomes a reminder of abundance. And the more you notice, the more there is notice, because gratitude multiplies awareness of blessings. Gratitude is also fuel for resilience. When you focus solely on pain, despair grows. When you deliberately remember what remains, courage rises. Gratitude reminds you of battles already endured, of storms already survived. It whispers that if you made it through before, you can make it through again. It shifts attention from the immensity of the obstacle to the strength that has already carried you this far. Resilience does not mean ignoring the weight. It means remembering that you have lifted before and can lift again. Gratitude provides the evidence that strength exists, that survival is possible, that hope is reasonable. Gratitude transforms wounds into wisdom. Every scar carries a story, and without gratitude, the story is only one of pain. But with gratitude, the same scar becomes a testament of endurance, of lessons learned, of strength gained. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Gratitude asks, what did this teach me? This shift does not glorify suffering, but redeems it, ensuring that pain is not wasted. The wound may remain, but gratitude ensures it produces fruit rather than bitterness. Gratitude also changes relationships. When you express appreciation to others, you strengthen bonds and heal fractures. Too often people are taken for granted until they are gone, and their absence reminds us of what we failed to acknowledge. Gratitude spoken aloud nurtures connection in the present. It tells people they matter, that their presence is not unnoticed, that their kindness is remembered. Gratitude softens conflicts, disarms pride, and replaces entitlement with humility. It is not only an inner posture, but an outward expression that can transform the atmosphere around you. Living with gratitude requires humility because it admits that not everything good in your life is earned. Some blessings are gifts, undeserved yet freely given. Gratitude acknowledges dependence, recognizing the role of others, of circumstances, or grace. This humility dismantles arrogance and replaces it with awe. Instead of believing you are self-made, gratitude reminds you that you are supported, that you stand on the shoulders of those who came before, that you are part of something larger than yourself. This recognition fosters compassion, because when you see your own blessings clearly, You become more willing to extend generosity to others. Gratitude also interrupts the cycle of comparison. When you are consumed with what others have, you blind yourself to what you possess. Envy thrives where gratitude is absent. But when you practice gratitude, you begin to value your own path, your own journey, your own gifts. You stop measuring your worth against another's highlight reel and start appreciating the unique story unfolding in your life. Gratitude frees you from the constant hunger for more by revealing the sufficiency of what already is. It does not kill ambition but purifies it, ensuring that your drive for progress is rooted in purpose rather than in jealousy. In times of loss, gratitude becomes both the hardest and most necessary discipline. It is natural to fixate on absence, on what was taken, on the empty spaces left behind. But gratitude insists on remembering what was given, on cherishing the moments shared, on honoring the love received. It does not erase grief, but it prevents grief from erasing joy. Gratitude and grief can coexist, one acknowledging the pain of what is gone, the other celebrating the beauty of what once was. Together they create a balance that allows healing to unfold without bitterness. The power of gratitude lies not in its ability to change circumstances, but in its ability to change perception. Circumstances may remain harsh, but gratitude changes the posture with which you face them. It strengthens the heart, clarifies the mind, and fills the soul with light even in the darkest seasons. Gratitude is not an emotion to be waited for, it is a choice to be made daily. It is a discipline and attitude, a lens that can turn scarcity into abundance, wounds into wisdom, losses into lessons, and ordinary days into sacred gifts. Fear disguises itself as caution, as wisdom, as practicality, but beneath the mask it is a thief. It steals opportunities before they are born, silences voices before they are heard, and kills dreams before they are tried. Fear whispers stories of disaster in your mind, showing you visions of failure, so vivid that you believe them to be prophecy. It convinces you that rejection will destroy you, that mistakes will define you, that risk will ruin you. Fear thrives in imagination, magnifying shadows until they appear larger than the light. It does not need to be real to be powerful, it only needs to be believed. The tragedy of fear is not in the moments when danger is present, but in the countless moments when danger is only imagined. Most fears never materialize, yet they shape decisions, limit movement, and shrink lives. People remain in jobs they hate because fear tells them they are not capable of more. They stay silent in rooms where their voice is needed because fear warns them of ridicule. They avoid love because fear threatens heartbreak, and in doing so they live lives avoiding pain but also forfeiting joy. Fear does not merely protect from risk, it prevents from living fully. The first step in overcoming fear is recognizing its presence. Fear often hides under rational excuses. I'm not ready, the timing isn't right, I don't have the resources. These may sound logical, but beneath them lies the trembling voice of fear. To confront fear, you must name it honestly. Ask yourself, am I avoiding this because it truly isn't possible, or because I am afraid of what might happen if I try? The clarity of this question exposes the disguise and reveals fear for what it is, a prison of the mind. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move despite it. Waiting until fear disappears means waiting forever, because fear always finds another reason to stay. The moment you act, fear loses power, because fear feeds on hesitation. Action disrupts its control. Every step forward, even trembling, shrinks the size of the monster that seemed immovable. Each act of courage rewrites the script, proving that fear's predictions are not facts. Courage grows not in giant leaps, but in consistent defiance, in choosing again and again not to bow before fear's voice. It is important to understand that fear itself is not the enemy. Fear was designed to protect, to warn of danger, to keep you alive. But in modern life, fear often misfires, sounding alarms where no real threat exists. The challenge is not to eliminate fear, but to discern when it speaks truth and when it lies. A car speeding toward you deserves fear. The possibility of embarrassment in a meeting does not. Learning to separate real danger from imagined danger is the art of mastering fear. Once you discern the difference, you can thank fear for its warning and still move forward when its concern is misplaced. Fear often roots itself in the past. A failure years ago, a rejection in childhood, a betrayal left unresolved. These experiences plant seeds that grow into beliefs about the future. Fear convinces you that because it happened once, it will happen again, that the past is prophecy. But the past is only evidence if you allow it to be. Every moment is new, every attempt is different, and history is not destiny. To overcome fear, you must untangle your present from your past, refusing to let old wounds dictate new opportunities. One of the most effective ways to confront fear is through exposure. The things you avoid remain terrifying because avoidance reinforces their power. But when you face them gradually, repeatedly, their grip loosens. If you fear speaking, begin with small conversations. If you fear rejection, risk hearing no. Each exposure builds tolerance, and tolerance builds confidence. Fear weakens not through resistance but through engagement. By stepping into the very spaces fear guards, you discover that the dragon is smaller than the shadow it casts. Fear also diminishes in the presence of purpose. When your why is stronger than your fear, you find the strength to act. Parents overcome fear of sacrifice for their children. Leaders overcome fear of criticism for their mission. Artists overcome fear of failure for their creation. Purpose provides a compass that directs you forward even when fear blocks the road. Without purpose, fear dominates. With purpose, fear becomes background noise, acknowledged but ignored in pursuit of something greater. The voices around you either amplify or silence fear. Surround yourself with those who constantly warn of risk, and your fear will multiply. Surround yourself with those who speak courage, and you will borrow their strength when your own falters. Courage is contagious, just as fear is. The company you keep shapes the battles you fight. Choose to walk with those who remind you of your capacity rather than those who reinforce your limitations. Finally, remember that fear often appears at the threshold of growth. The moments when you feel most afraid are often the moments right before breakthrough. Fear guards the door to transformation because beyond that door lies expansion, change, and freedom. The intensity of your fear may be the clearest sign that you are stepping into territory that matters. Instead of running from fear, recognize it as a compass pointing toward where growth waits. Fear is loudest where your destiny is closest. Resilience is not simply the ability to bounce back. It is the capacity to bend without breaking, to endure without surrender, to stumble yet continue forward with a heart still willing to hope. It is forged not in comfort, but in the fire of adversity, shaped by trials that threaten to consume you, but instead refine you. Resilience is not the absence of struggle. It is the presence of persistence. It is the decision to rise again, not because circumstances have improved, but because your spirit refuses to remain on the ground. At its root, resilience is built on acceptance. Many people waste precious energy resisting reality, wishing circumstances were different, denying pain, or trying to escape it. But resilience begins when you look life in the eye and say, this is what it is. Not in resignation, but in acknowledgement. You cannot overcome what you refuse to face. Acceptance gives you the clarity to respond wisely instead of reacting blindly. It anchors you in the present moment where strength can be cultivated instead of leaving you trapped in fantasies of what should have been. Resilience grows in proportion to perspective. When you see every hardship as the end, despair overwhelms you. But when you view hardship as part of a larger journey, it becomes bearable. A single failure feels catastrophic if you interpret it as permanent. But as one chapter in a long story, it becomes a stepping stone. Perspective does not remove pain, but it contextualizes it, reminding you that valleys are temporary and peaks still exist beyond them. Those who endure are not always those who suffer less, but those who see further, those who remind themselves that storms pass and seasons change. Resilience also requires adaptability. Life rarely unfolds according to plan, and rigidity breaks under pressure. Those who cling too tightly to how things should have been are crushed when life shifts. But those who adapt, who adjust course without abandoning the destination, are able to keep moving. Adaptability does not mean giving up on dreams. It means finding new ways to pursue them when old paths close. Resilient people bend like trees in the wind, swaying with the storm, but refusing to be uprooted. Their flexibility becomes their strength. Community is another foundation of resilience. Alone, the weight of adversity can feel unbearable. But in the presence of others, friends who listen, mentors who guide, companions who walk beside, the load is shared Resilience is not always the individual's solitary fight. It is often the collective strength of those who surround them. To lean on others is not weakness, it is wisdom. Isolation breeds despair, but connection nurtures endurance. When your own strength falters, the strength of another can carry you until you find your footing again. Resilience is deeply connected to hope. Without hope, perseverance collapses under the weight of futility. Hope whispers that the pain has meaning, that the future holds something better, that suffering is not the whole story. Hope is the fuel that keeps you walking when the road stretches endlessly. It does not promise ease, but it promises possibility. And when you believe that possibility exists, even faintly, you can endure almost anything. Resilience is the marriage of persistence and hope, the refusal to let despair dictate your direction. Every act of resilience strengthens the muscle for future battles. Just as physical muscles grow when they are torn and rebuilt, so the soul's strength grows each time it is stretched but does not snap. What once felt impossible gradually becomes manageable. Each survival becomes evidence, proof that you are stronger than you imagined, that you can endure more than you feared. This evidence builds confidence, and confidence builds resilience. The next time hardship comes, you face it not only with fear but with memory. The memory of every storm you have already weathered. Resilience does not mean you never break down, never cry, never feel overwhelmed. It means you allow yourself to feel, but you do not allow those feelings to define your destiny. Tears do not negate strength, they cleanse it. Fear does not cancel courage, it gives a context. Resilient people give themselves permission to be human, to grieve, to doubt, to stumble, but they do not give themselves permission to quit. They understand that resilience is not perfection but persistence. Purpose strengthens resilience in ways nothing else can. When you know why you are enduring, the how becomes bearable. Soldiers survive battle for love of country. Parents survive hardship for love of children. Dreamers survive setbacks for love of vision. Purpose transforms suffering from meaningless torment into meaningful sacrifice. It reframes pain as part of something larger, a contribution, a legacy, a calling. Without purpose, hardship feels like punishment. With purpose, it feels like preparation. Resilience is ultimately an act of defiance. It looks at hardship and says, "You will not define me." It looks at failure and says, "You will not end me." It looks at despair and says, "You will not silence me." It is rebellion against the forces that seek to diminish the human spirit. And in this rebellion lies freedom, because no matter how much life takes, it cannot take your decision to rise again. Resilience does not guarantee you avoid pain, but it guarantees pain will not have the last word over you. Dreams are not fantasies meant only for the night. They are the seeds of destiny planted in the soil of the heart. They are visions of what could be, glimpses of the life you were created to live, invitations to step beyond the ordinary and into the extraordinary. Dreams are the language of possibility, the whispers of potential that tell you there is more inside you than you have yet revealed. They are not accidents, nor are they illusions. They are the compass pointing toward the path of purpose. Yet too often dreams are abandoned, not because they are impossible, but because fear, doubt, and discouragement convince people to lay them down before they even begin. Pursuing dreams requires courage because dreams demand risk. To dream is to envision a future that does not yet exist and then to commit yourself to building it. This means stepping into uncertainty, embracing failure as part of the process, and enduring the ridicule of those who cannot see what you see. Every great achievement was once considered impossible until someone refused to stop dreaming. The risk of dreaming is real, disappointment, loss, even heartbreak, but the greater risk is to live without them, to silence the voice of vision and settle for mere existence. Dreams require discipline. Inspiration may ignite a dream, but only discipline keeps it alive. Late nights, early mornings, sacrifices, repetitions, failures, and corrections are the bricks that build the house of dreams. Many expect dreams to manifest easily, as though passion alone were enough, but dreams demand work. They demand patience when results are slow, persistence when obstacles rise, and consistency when motivation fades. Discipline is love in action, the commitment to your dream even when the emotions of excitement have dimmed. One of the greatest enemies of dreams is doubt. Doubt creeps in quietly, Asking questions that seem logical: what if you fail? What if you are not good enough? What if you are wasting your time? Left unchecked, these questions multiply until they drown out belief. But every dreamer must learn that doubt is not prophecy, it is merely noise. The way to silence doubt is not to wait until it disappears, but to act in its presence. Doubt loses power each time you take a step forward despite it. Courage is not the absence of doubt, but the refusal to obey it. Dreams will be tested. The path is rarely smooth, and obstacles often appear insurmountable. Rejections, delays, financial struggles, betrayals, and fatigue will all try to convince you to surrender. But these tests are not signs to quit, they are the refining fires that prove your commitment. A dream pursued without struggle produces little strength, but a dream fought for, endured through, and protected against all odds becomes unshakable. The tests are not punishments, they are preparation. They are the storms that strengthen your roots so that when your dream finally blossoms, it can withstand the weight of its own fruit. It is also important to understand that dreams are not only personal, they are communal. The dream placed within you is rarely just for you. It is designed to impact others, to create change, to inspire, to heal, to build. A dream hoarded in selfishness shrinks, but a dream shared multiplies. The teacher who dreams of shaping minds, the doctor who dreams of saving lives, the artist who dreams of stirring souls, all these dreams ripple outward into the lives of countless others. To pursue your dream is not only to fulfill your own destiny, but to contribute to the destiny of others. Comparison is another dream killer. Looking at the speed or success of others can create discouragement, making you believe your progress is too slow or your dream too small. But dreams are not competitions, they are callings. Your dream has its own timeline, its own design, its own impact. Comparison blinds you to your unique path and tempts you to abandon it in pursuit of someone else's. The only measure that matters is whether you are being faithful to the dream placed within you. What is meant for you cannot be taken by another, and what belongs to another will never satisfy you. Surroundings influence dreams profoundly. Voices of encouragement breathe life into them, while voices of cynicism suffocate them. Many dreams die not because the dreamer lacked talent or effort, but because they allowed negative voices to dictate what was possible. Guard your dream as you would guard a treasure. Share with those who believe in you, who challenge you, who remind you of its worth when you forget. Protect it from those who seek to shrink it, not out of wisdom, but out of their own fear. The right community can sustain a dream through the darkest seasons. Vision is essential to sustaining dreams. Vision is the ability to see beyond the immediate, to hold in your mind the image of what you are working toward, even when evidence is absent. Vision turns sacrifice into investment, making sense of sleepless nights and relentless effort. Without vision, dreams fade in the face of hardship. With vision, hardship becomes fuel. Vision is the reminder that the pain of discipline is temporary, but the reward of fulfillment is lasting. Ultimately, dreams demand perseverance. It is not enough to start, you must continue. The road is long, the setbacks are many, and the temptation to quit will whisper often. But perseverance is the difference between dreamers and achievers. Those who persevere refuse to measure progress only by speed, they measure it by faithfulness. Each step, no matter how small, is progress. Each day of persistence is proof that the dream is alive. And over time, what once felt distant becomes reality, not because it was easy, but because it was never abandoned.